I want to thank our media partner today, VERANDA. We could not have Design ADAC without VERANDA because they are our biggest sponsor of Design ADAC every single year, and we're so grateful to them. I want to thank our showroom sponsor, that's Sutherland and Perennials. Don't forget, after this presentation, we're going to go upstairs to Suite 227 for a reception and book signing with Bobby. So with that, I'm going to turn things over to Ellen McGauley, who's the executive editor of VERANDA.
Thank you, Katie. So nice to be here. Welcome, everyone. I'm Ellen McGauley, executive editor at VERANDA. And I think we sort of think of Design ADAC as kind of, you know, there's the calendar New Year, there's the Chinese New Year, there's fiscal New Year. This is Design New Year, you know? This is when we get to reconnect with all of you and we kind of see what you've all been doing. So I really want to say a heartfelt thank you to ADAC, Katie, Mackenzie, your entire team, Cammie, you're all amazing, and we just feel so welcome here and so proud to be celebrating our sort of Design New Year here. So, so nice to see you all. And I also want to thank our wonderful panel sponsor, Sutherland Perennials Studio. We have a whole beautiful contingent back here that we'll be able to see more of after this in the showroom. They've been a longtime partner of ours. And it makes so much sense for all of you readers at VERANDA who know how much we love the garden, love the outdoors, and really live there. We are so proud to be partnered with you all and want to thank you so much. This is my favorite format to do a panel, because it's not really a panel so much as it is a discussion. Bobby McAlpine needs no introduction, and seeing the size of this crowd, I know that he needs no introduction in any city, but particularly in Atlanta. I can see that by attendance. But we're at 40 years after the founding of his firm in 1983, with offices in his native Alabama, as well as Tennessee, Georgia, and New York, a furniture line, McAlpine Home. And he has just recently, just this month, released his third book titled McAlpine Romantic Modernism. And so you'll be seeing images, a first look at these images scrolling on the screens around us. It released last month from Rizzoli. And this, as with almost any discussion with Bobby McAlpine, it's as much of a discussion of creativity and a sense of connection, inquiry and innovation as it is of design. Those are all one and the same in the way that Bobby works. He has this way of expanding our perspective of design well beyond the three-dimensional. I was originally thinking sort of well beyond the linear, you know, that thing that we kind of see in books and we see in pictures, but our homes are three-dimensional. This speaks to my heart because, you know, I came into this industry as not as a design, I didn't have any training in design, but not just as a writer, but as a psychology major, you know? The soul of the home is what I was always interested in. And I know all of you, if you are designers, you are part-time psychologists. So, but what we need and how we live is always what has drawn me to this. And, but, you know, he expands our perspective, bringing us back to who we are, where we've been, and creates a shifting atmosphere of home, viewing it as something that should be very much alive. Structures at the hands of Bobby McAlpine have a pulse and a heartbeat, an id, an ego, and a superego, allowing the fundamentals of schools of classicism and modernism to mold and sort of grow until the owners can wear them like a well-tailored suit. This has been my understanding the more we've talked. Bobby wrote an amazing essay for us in the March-April issue where he talked about the contradictions in design, contradictions within ourselves, and how we must embrace them to really freshen our design. We're going to talk about that today, too. Welcome, Bobby. Thank you for being here. Congratulations on your book.
Thank you. Thank you.
Again, we're going to get into a lot. So you've told me, you know, veer me back when we get away, but same thing here, because there's a lot of places we could go with this. For those of us who have followed your career for all of these decades, we may recognize a departure here in these images from many of these designs. your work has helped shape the vernacular of the South. Does this book reflect a reinvention of sorts for you?
It does. This is the work that is it starts with my own house that I did with my partner Blake Weeks here in Atlanta. And it's kind of the house that I didn't really want to wait for someone to ask for. So sometimes I think you just have to run ahead, of the crowd, because what you get is so many times is a request that is based on what's popular and what's on Pinterest now, and what are you awake to, knowing to want. And so this house is the beginning of playing with some things like flat roofs and parapets and a kind of modernism that has not quite existed, but that plays into romantic history and point of view that I have, but has the humility and the texturing, that modernism sometimes does not.
Yeah. Well, that reminds me of something that you said that really framed, because I was kind of, what is romantic modernism? What are we talking about? And you said to me, I can see it with my eyes, but learning about how you looked at this, you gave me a great lens for how the coldness and untouchability, these are my words, not yours, of the modernism as it's sometimes viewed. You said historically a scary movie was in a Gothic, sort of like up on a hill with all of these pointy, spires. And presently, the evil villain lives in a modern house. But not in your modernism, is that correct?
I hope not.
But you're changing that. You're looking at modernism with a more less firm of a lens and just kind of a creative molding of it. Correct?
Yeah. I really don't follow doctrine in general in any way, and so I tend to shop everything that there is, in order to tell the story of whom I've just met, who's in front of me now. And usually that is a combination of varying elements and contradictions that are within each person. And so I'm greatly inspired by the way something makes you feel and the emotional accuracy, like when you can get it emotionally spot on. Like very often set design gets it exactly right. And it may not be a good literal depiction of that place and time and those things and situations that existed in that period, but it follows the story perfectly.
Yeah. And that's not something that strictly following modernism or classicism can do, correct?
That's right.
Yeah. In your book, and this is, again, you have to read this book cover to cover. It is like a reader's, as beautiful as it is so inspiring. And so I'm going to give away another thing that you say in here, which is that classicism and modernism are the silver and gold crayons in a box of 64. And for me, that brought me to getting my arms around this idea of romanticism, which of course I would want to do. That sounds so lovely. And is there a way that you can describe to us what romanticism is? This is yours, right?
Sure. Sure. I think it has a broad palette. Basically, it loves things the way they are because of their flaws and because of their imperfections. And it's not necessarily, from a romantic standpoint, it's not really trying to narrow you into a particular exacting thing. So for me in my practice, in all these decades that I've been doing this work, modernism has always been present in the work. There's been a liberal floor plan. There's been a high relationship between garden and interior of the house, all of those things. have been present, but they've been very silent, very quiet, and not spoken. And it has been rare that you would ever see a house that I've done would have a door in the middle of it, speaking to classicism. And so I have held those things at bay, like someone on a spiritual journey might hold doctrine at bay. Mm-hmm. And so it really has only been in the last few years that I've kind of let the gates open and decided to throw an umbrella over modernism and classicism and pull it into that box of crayons that you can tell a romantic story with. It's one of the elements, and it's one of the truths.
Yeah. And it's, you referenced set design, and as kind of a comparison, that is capturing, I think, what a set designer mandate would be, is to capture a mood, convey some of the story with the set design, right?
Yes.
Would you say you're doing that with people? You're telling some of their story?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. You know, I think when you're trying to, it's like trying to catch a firefly. You're trying to nail what is the DNA of who you just met. You know, how do you stop the film right there, and how do you build that thing in an accurate way that has touched everything that really comprises the character that's in front of you. And so building architecture is, certainly the ultimate freeze frame.
Yeah.
In those regards.
Yeah. The character meaning the client.
Yes.
The character in front of you. I'm going to skip ahead for a minute because it's just too good of a segue. There is a house that you'll see, you may recognize it. It was on the cover of Veranda July, August of last year, and it has this beautiful glossy vestibule. And I believe you may have even described it to me as kind of a sort of a textural, gritty exterior, and then inside is kind of like the inside of a pearl. And so I asked you, what were you responding to there? That was, hold on, let me find. Yes, it was like a lacquered vestibule. What led you to? What was it about the owners that led you to do that? That was a relationship with her specifically, correct?
Right. That's right.
Yeah.
That's a house that we did in Naples, Florida, for this exquisite woman who I will never forget how she brought herself into the room at every meeting, and what she left outside the door, and where she went when she came in. And it was always such a lovely place that she elected the bright and positive side of herself to walk in that door, regardless of what all else was going on in her life. And matching that was always every single thing she had on. There was not one stitch more than was needed in any garment. There was nothing extra, but it was exquisite couture.
Yeah.
And it was exactly her. And so often for me, what lights my appetite is that I've been asked to tell someone's story and to do a portrait of sorts. For them, and put them in a place in the world that we're creating together that is right there at the ask of their heart. It's what their heart has wanted for so long, and that they cannot find, and that they have no choice but to try to find someone to help them to build the place, so that they can walk free in that realm, in a larger realm than just themselves.
Yeah. This was very instructional for me when we talked about this because, and it's just enlightening, and again, this is July, August, just to see this whole house, when you kind of think of this conversation and want to see a little bit more of this, either in Bobby's book, but knowing exactly which house it is July, August, Veranda, any of you who keep all of those archives. I had, of course, read the story and edited the story and had read about how she was very enthusiastic about the closet that she would have, and she had all of this couture. And so my mind went a bit too linear. And asking you, I said, oh, is it because you kind of knew she was very fashionable and she had said, I really, I want to, and I don't know that she did, but I just remember there was a distinct closet kind of focus in some of the story. And Bobby said, no, it wasn't anything she said. She didn't have to say it. And I thought that kind of it was instructional for me, because I thought, yeah. We're not talking about, she said this, so I translated it to this.
Yeah.
It was the way you had seen her come in.
Yeah, it was by example.
And
interpretation. Really.
Yeah.
And to this day, I hope that I learned something about how to walk into a room, from her.
Yeah.
And she, like a few people that each of us know, when you're in her company, there is an expectation of excellence. I mean, very high, you're on a high plane of operation. And so you rise to the level of where she is trying to live in all things. I don't care if it's food or dress or conversation or speak or posture, any of those kinds of things. You come up to that level. Just like with some of your friends, you're smarter when you're with them, because it wakes up a whole other part of you. And then there are the others that are a whole lot of fun.
But everybody here is the former. They're the former.
Yeah.
I can see why you say that romanticism, I paused because I know I'm dwelling on this, raids every closet and chest in your emotional house. That requires some self-exploration, right? Or perhaps exploration of your clients, but you're observing mostly.
It's mostly observing. If as a designer, I think we start lining our interior with things that we see, acknowledge, record. And so I think for myself, I feel like I have thousands and thousands of interior facets within me. And when someone new comes up to me to ask me to take them or to some particular place, then certain ones of those facets are going to wake up. Mm-hmm. They're going to light up. And some of them have never lit up before. They've been in there since you were a child sometimes, but they've never had the opportunity to raise their hand and say, I think this is my turn. I think this thing that you saw that one time, this thing that you acknowledged enough that you remember it, in fact, it's time to play that with this, with that, because that's where you are right this minute. And so to that regard, I guess it's therapy too.
Yeah.
Because you get to exercise yourself so much if you just pay attention to not only everything that has happened to you in your life and that you've loved and that you've coveted or desired or been attracted to, but what of those things is now awakened by who has just stepped before you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it really does position homes as memoirs.
Yeah.
And we talked a bit about this in planning for the essay that you wrote for our magazine about embracing our own contradictions and our tastes and wants. And you said that these are what keep our environments fresh. And I actually, until we talked about this again, this was an enlightening moment, because I actually thought with some contradictions in my own style. I've actually thought I may be able to find this in like the DSM-4. Like I think there's like this might be a pathology or something when I've got my Art Deco side and then I've got my Georgian plaid, and I'm not seeing where those mesh, but they're just both part of me, right? And you said those are actually necessary, embracing those. And what are some examples of your own contradictions that you've discovered in your style and what you need around you?
I've built a number of houses, renovated a lot of houses in my life, and I've struck the set many times with the interior, where I said, clear the whole house out. I'm gonna redo this whole thing because it's a laboratory. Mm-hmm. It's a testing ground. Consequently, I'm not terribly sentimental about things as much as I see them as vehicles to take you someplace to a particular differing emotional place. So I've had a lot of exercise, and I love to do it over and over again. Mm-hmm. And now the last couple of houses that I've done, my partner Blake Weeks has helped me, and we've been side by side, just taking it to what is this particular place that is exactly both of us. And so it's a great exercise to do.
Exactly both of you.
Yeah, it's exactly both of us. And sometimes even when it's just you, mm-hmm. You're not just you. You're a lot of things. It's mm-hmm. capable to firmly believe two opposing things and believe them both.
Yeah.
At the same time.
Is that something that you talk to your clients about? Because I would imagine, I've been writing about interiors and design for 20 years, but this was something I'd never written about or talked about. Or when you're sitting down doing plans, mm-hmm. is this something where you have to say sometimes, hold on, both of those things can be true,
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, you meet it you run into it as an architect, and as an interior designer, you run into it with couples, a lot, to where everything that they say, and sometimes is different from one to the other, and you have to wonder enough, where's the common denominator here? And how is this complementary to this? And they're not saying the same things. And you've got to find what is the salad or the soup you can make of that is the sense that they make,
mm-hmm.
To you.
Yeah.
And certainly, the better the marriage, the better the house I can come up with. Yeah. Or I just choose one of them, Yeah.
Well, that, we've all heard, and it's become a bit of a cliche, I think, is the idea of the dream house. But one thing that, you had mentioned is that often, a lot of times your clients are building on these ideas of dream houses over time, and they have to wait till it's actually the right time to pull the trigger. It might be when the children have moved to college, or they have the right kind of nest egg to move to it. And you made the point that you may need to revisit these plans because or encourage the client to revisit these plans because you're not who you were 10 years ago.
Yeah, I think it occurred to me, particularly during the pandemic, where anyone who had been sitting on a dream for years and years and years that was unexecuted, kind of thought, you know what, this thing that's happening to us in the world right now is not going to happen to me again, and I find myself where I am right now, living the way I'm living. I'm not going to do it. And so many people woke up and said, I'm pushing go mm-hmm. on what I have been thinking about for so very long in my life. But it occurred to me that also the truth is you are not the same person that you were when you conceived that dream that you've been courting. You're not the same person that you were 20 years ago when you began the desire to do this thing, and that you need to go and examine what is the truth of you. What's the honest to God truth about you, because you want to build the truth of you, because that's where your soul and your heart will come to rest, as if it's walking in the honest truth of yourself and not some mythical truth of yourself that you once imagined.
That was something that was very moving to me, I think. And you say it in a more moving way every time, because I would imagine you'd get some pushback if you say it in a way of like, well, I mean, you may want to consider some other things. No, I've been waiting to do this. This is 10 years, but wait, who are you? You know, what other things have you become since then, right?
Yeah.
Absolutely enlightening.
Yeah.
You say we have this simultaneous craving for, in the book, this, you kind of address this idea of order and freedom. What do you mean by that, and what are some of the ways you address this in design?
Well, I know when I'm faced with a very complex problem, architecturally, a house that has so much programming to it, or so many buildings. Something like classicism gives you at least an initial way to organize and find the symmetries and the parts that speak to one another for a complex problem. So there are many different ways to kind of solve it, and in the end, the actual personality comes in how you combine the elements and how you may violate that order now that you've made enough sense of it, that it's not chaos in your head. What needs to shift, and in what ways do you let its hair down a little bit so that it's got a crack in its armor enough for you to emotionally be able to get in it. In the first place, it's the gap in the teeth, that makes it easy to walk towards that person. It's not perfect teeth that makes it easy. That doesn't make it easy at all. It's the flaw that is the way in.
We create the order and then take away a little bit, right? Or it doesn't have to be a little bit, but to create the order and then kind of move back from it and see what you can do. Another aspect of your work that is always, it's just ever present, is the intimate relationship with nature. And again, this is such a good time to really be thinking, and this is present in so many of the imagery, and outdoor living is living. It is seamless in good design. How early in your projects are you imagining the landscape design?
Well, there's usually, from the get-go, something hugely influential about the place itself, the context of where it is, whether it's a house in town and it's in a specific neighborhood, and it is one of many pieces that comprise that neighborhood, and you are about to file in this tooth right here into that bunch of houses, that becomes one thing. But lake houses, mountain houses, farmhouses, things that are there, whose very purpose of being there at all are to witness something larger than itself, then that house is a vehicle to witness something. And it is not there to be this trophy or this iconic thing or possession or object, in a landscape. It's there to witness something larger than itself. And so in many cases, like a mountain house or a lake house, it's how do you be there without ruining it by the fact that you are there. You know, just drive your RV up to the Grand Canyon to see what it looks like, and then realize that you just ruined the Grand Canyon in the very act of you showing up in it in an RV. You destroyed the thing you came to see. So, that.
I'm not going to be getting in an RV anytime soon.
It was flesh-colored, man.
Yeah, it was. Well, you know, you've also said, what do you have to do in order to put the house there? You know, you kind of start there as well, like you're thinking about what is going to have to happen and what can I do to kind of, is it make up for it? Is that even the right phrasing?
Yeah, I mean, I know when we recently built our lake house, you know, as delicately as you want to insert yourself into the wooded landscape, you know, around a lake, the real truth is that you've done it. You've completely raped it. You know, you've driven vehicles in there and you've scraped off whole areas and you've recontoured land and you've taken out trees to make room for the house. You have completely changed that context. Mm-hmm. And so the rest of it is amends. It's an enormous, colossal, monumental amends of how do I undo what I just did and heal it back in to something that is a good thing, because it will never be the same thing again.
Yeah. And I've noticed we have time, one more, and then we're going to move it over to a Q&A, so anyone get your questions ready. But all of the images and all of the work you say has been collaborations with landscape designers and interior designers. And one thing I've noticed about you is that, you know, you're very deliberate, particularly in landscape design, but, you know, because they can do those amends with you. They understand what you're trying to accomplish. But you sort of describe this as what leads to the success of this is a knowingness between you all. Was that a years long kind of process, right?
Yeah. I mean, I've been asked a couple of times, you know, I think the question is usually directed to, you know, what house are you proudest of? But I think all I heard was, what are you proudest of? And I'm proudest of this team of talent that I have surrounded myself with and run alongside for decades now. Mm-hmm. There are over 50 of us at McAlpine, and it's phenomenal talent. And I live in a certain section of that job description, which is, you know, the concept and vision section of it. But it takes someone that beautifully knows how to take that vision and massage it and develop it to mature it and create the documents and run it all the way through it as a long runner, not a sprinter, but the long runner that runs it so long until the thing is complete. And that's a different build than the build I've given myself. Mm-hmm. But I could not do these things without those people. Mm-hmm. And then I also get to work in conjunction with talent that is outside of my organization. You know, other interior designers besides us, you know, too, that are the people that bring in that other wash over the painting that really adds another layer of depth to it, another patina to it that's really crucial, and we learn things from those people as well. And so it's good to collaborate and know that, you know, we are specialists, you know, in what we do, and they are specialists, whether they're interior designers or landscape architects. All they think about all day long is that thing. And so they have many more hours in being consumed day and night over those thoughts than any one of us.
Yeah, yeah. You were very quick to, in our conversations, that's one of the things that I love about talking to you about is to acknowledge that this is the work of a lot of different people. And
Yes.
yeah, but your point of view is so enlightening and refreshing. And going back before we go to questions, I would just say that you began by talking about those people that kind of make us elevate, make us better, smarter, and you, I think, are that for us. And so that's very apparent, which brings us to questions. Yeah, we have one right.
Just one quick reminder. We are recording all of our presentations this week. So if everyone will just wait for me to get to you so that we can have the best sound quality.
Well, thank you for the talk. And at what point do you get the landscape people involved? Is it at a point where you can be influenced by them at all?
You know, ideally, I would tell you as a client coming to me that let's finish building this team. Let's make sure we're all here. You know, let's get the interior designer, let's get the landscape architect. Let's build our team and start from there. I think it's good, you know, the earlier the better. Because the landscape architect is not someone who is invited in to finish the architecture. They're there to help the architect also, in many cases, be more hypersensitive to the site itself. Certainly in the case of where you're looking at massive acreage and projects that we work on sometimes that have a laundry list of buildings that are going to comprise the whole compound in time. So a lot of studies some have to really precede us before they release us to say, okay, now do the main house.
Great question. Yeah.
Okay.
So you said you're not the same person. What is the truth of you? So how do you determine that when you're meeting with a client? How do you ascertain what their truth is and then how you're going to develop that into a home?
It's a between the lines kind of thing in terms of listening, I guess, you know, to people. Usually there is a catalyst, you know, that has released them into action. You know, their kids have just gone to college, you know, or they're young and they've had one child and one's on the way. And so they're building very different things at that point. You know, one might need to be nudged to do a braver thing and also go back to the honeymoon of their relationship, you know, where it's really the house for the two of them that can swell, if necessary, to accommodate everyone. And the other one is this safe carriage to raise this tender young family. They're different things, and people are in different walks of life. And I think also at some point, you know, particularly after you've built your house in town, you know, you built your house that your mom and daddy expected you to build, that would make you, you know, that you're still seeking the approval of the world, you know, in how you show up and how they think of you, you know, is that house. And then you go off out of town and build a house, and by God, that's the house you love, is that house. You love that house. And if you were to come back to town and build another house, you would have learned something a whole lot more about how to show up in town as well. And you start taking off layers that you might be kind of falsely wearing, and stand up and tell the truth. You know, so the house that we built in Atlanta is a house that's kind of like that moment, you know, in the movies, you know, where a woman has been asked to give a speech, and she is also fighting cancer, and she's on chemo, and at some point early into the talk of it, she just breaks into flop sweat, and she pulls her wig off and just says, "Fuck it." This is me. Build that. That's who everybody wants to sit next to, you know? That's who you want to know. You want to know, that's who you can trust, is somebody who will tell you the truth about themselves. So build that,
Yeah.
you know.
When in our reality of our practice, we're working with clients who haven't been through the process. They may not be as sophisticated. We ourselves don't have the reputation or star appeal. So coming into a project where you're attempting to get to what the vision and concept is with them, who they are, you're almost having to help create that with them, and then come up with what that vision and concept is and lead them consistently through that path to develop the project. It can be very challenging when, a little bit like herding cats, trying to keep them on track and even ascertain what that vision and concept is. And I think when a designer has enough confidence and star appeal, they're willing to go along with you after you've kind of come up with your thinking for them. Okay, I hear you. I'm going to create this vision for you. Any suggestions on how we can do that, considering who maybe our clients are and who we are, which it would be a little different than getting to where you are?
Yeah, I mean, it's like, if you're old enough to ever have had to defrost a refrigerator and you had to pull that pan of water out from under the freezer compartment and try to walk from there to the sink without spilling it, those relationships are like that. Take a baking pan and fill it full of water and try to get to that wall over there. You know, it's very delicate, and it's a long, slow crawl. It's a long, over time. Sometimes it will take decades for you to find your people, you know, and for the right people to be coming to you. That's where, as an architect, for me, I don't know how I knew, but I knew in my 20s that the houses I was doing even then were being lost because they were getting abominable interior designs, the furnishings, the appointments. So they were not publishable. No one was ever going to find me, ever. I was just going to die under the porch, you know. And so magazines in those days were and still were a powerful vehicle. So publication helps the right people find you and come to you, and they will challenge you less and trust you more. But you can't get there fast. It's hard to get there fast. You have to do the hard work. Probably the silver lining to that is the muscle group that you create in terms of empathy, that all you can do most of the time is take someone to the level of comfortable until they're right bumping uncomfortable with where it is you're trying to take them without crossing the line or spoiling the whole thing or getting fired. You know, that happens.
Do we have time for more? or how many?
I'll say too that
Let me run around.
having an interior design practice as well as an architecture practice for so long, it's way harder, I think, in the interior design practice. Because being an architect has enough, just barely enough intimidation in it that you don't tend to challenge your architect quite as much as you do your interior designer.
Yeah.
And so, as an interior designer, your clients will treat you any kind of way.
Goes back to the psychology of your practice, right?
Yeah.
Okay, good. We have a question over here.
Bobby, you've shared about your talent in the spectrum of all the talent that makes up doing something like this. Can you share with us, in your range, maybe what some of your favorite elements are, what particularly delights you, or something unexpected?
You're going to have to rephrase that a tad.
Sure. So again, you have a certain role in what you do amongst everyone. I was just wondering if you can share with us something that is unexpected, that is delightful to you, or your favorite element of what you do in.
Well, I think it has changed, and I think now in my 60s, I think I'm more courageous in what I ask people to do in terms of the clients. I'm a little more willing to fall flat on my face with a solution. So what I will propose to them is braver and less pleasy than some of the work that I've done in the past. It's not as safe. And so when I was asked by a 75-year-old woman to do the consummate Bobby McAlpine house that she'd wanted to build for 20 years, I gave her a flat roof, steel windowed, modernist 1930s house. That's what I showed up. Not these steep roofs that lay down low on one side, not all these dormers and shed devices, all the things that are kindly and are warm-hearted and easy to walk toward. I gave her this other thing because that's who I saw. She was starved to death to show up as that modern woman. And I showed her that, and she loved it, and she built it, and she adores it. And I wouldn't have done that in my 50s. I would have played what I wouldn't have gone as far.
Yeah.
So I don't know if that's an answer at all to your
Yeah.
question. But it just as to say that I think at different phases in your life, you go about things differently.
Sounds like one of your favorite things is seeing the truth in people. That's what I just heard.
Yeah.
Which is,
Absolutely. And sometimes the truth is weird.
All right, I think we have time for
Built
one more.
that.
okay.
So I love how beautifully you speak about mending like the landscape and the architecture together and kind of like humanity as well. So how do you blend biophilic design into your interiors and like with humanity as well?
Say that last part. How do I
Nature
blend?
versus humanity like in your interiors kind of.
Sort of blending nature and interiors inside, right? Or yeah. Blending nature and design, right, in the interiors. Biophilic.
Oh, certainly. Well, a great gift of modernism, no matter what style it's executed in or what hand, is that it makes a seamless transition between interior and exterior space. That floor material in that salon slides right under a glass wall onto a terrace of the same material into the landscape. And you're not looking through holes in the box, you're looking through a plane of glass into a landscape. And so you begin to massage and reach out and pull in both. And so that could affect a color story. It could affect just dimming the lights of the interior down so low that what is the star is what is outside of that glass wall. That may mean that your windows are painted dark. It may mean that your room is darker than brighter in order that it be a better camera lens to witness this thing that is beyond you and that's outside of you. And so it might, in the case of our lake house, as an extreme, the rooms are black. So the house is in fact a camera. You are inside a camera when you're inside that house.
Great. I think that wraps it up. Bobby, you are a poet and an enlightening voice in our world of design, and I just want to thank you from the bottom of my heart. Thank you so much.